often come to find them. Eden decides to go in search of flowers. It has already become dark, and he regrets that he did not take a servant with him. However, he discards these thoughts, since he must do this only on his own, so that the princess will rejoice thanks only to him. And finally, Eden finds a flower. It grows on a rocky, steep mountain slope. Clutching Theon's handkerchief, Dorothy thinks that, despite Eden's apologies, she doesn't want to see him yet. There is a knock on the door, and Clara appears on the threshold along with the Bronte family maid, who is looking for the boy. Dorothy finds out that he went looking for a flower for her and never returned. Eden, clinging to sharp stones, climbs the sheer cliff, and now he has almost reached it. Making a final push, he grabs the stems and pulls out the flowers, admiring them with a fascinated gaze. Suddenly, the sole of his shoe slips, and before he knows it, Eden is flying down the cliff. Concerned, Dorothea, accompanied by Stefan, goes into the forest in search of Eden, constantly shouting his name. There is absolute darkness all around, and suddenly the princess sees some kind of glow in the distance behind the bushes. Coming closer and parting the bushes, she sees Eden sitting on the ground, wiping away tears with one hand and holding flowers in the other. When he sees Dorothy, he turns away from her because he doesn't want to appear so dirty and ugly to her. The princess cleans Eden's face from dirt with her sleeve. She understands that because of the past, she did not look at him at all in the present. She doesn't care at all what he looks like now, because for her sake, he went in search of a flower, risking his life. Dorothea weaves a flower into her hair. She realizes that the beauty of Eden's soul is important to her, and not what he looks like. She places the second bud behind the boy's ear and joyfully thanks him for the gift. For the past few days, Joy and Poe had been avoiding Dorothy. As soon as they made eye contact, they flinched and ran away. And then there is a knock on the door of the princess's room, and on the threshold stand Joy and Poe, who is holding a plate with a piece of apple pie. As an apology for his behavior, Joy, as promised, gives the princess a pie that the cook helped the brothers prepare. Dorothy is delighted with the pie, because before no food has brought her as much pleasure as one that was prepared with her in mind. She thanks the boys. They jump with happiness, because they managed to please the princess, and at that moment, someone comes in. Turning, Dorothea sees an imperial knight who has arrived to give her orders from Karnan. The princess is informed of the emperor's order to return to the capital, since her health has already been restored. Out of anger, Dorothy even drops the pie from her hands, because everyone who cares about her is in Cerithian. The princess tells the emperor that she will stay at the estate until Joy and Poe bake her a new pie. Raymond silently runs after Theon walking along the corridor and joyfully falls onto his shoulders. Out of surprise, the boy pushes his attacker away, not immediately recognizing him as a friend. Ray notices that Theon's hands are shaking very much. He is worried about his condition, because the boy even missed his history lesson. Julia appears in the corridor, calling Theon, and the two of them leave to talk in private. Ray sees that something is happening to his friend, but hopes that there is nothing serious, and Theon will soon tell everything himself. Sitting over a cup of tea, Julia notices that Theon looks especially tired today. He tells her about how he went for a walk at dawn, but suddenly his vision went dark, and the bird he was looking at died. Grabbing his hair, he realized his guilt, and that he had killed the bird without meaning to. Theon again grabs his hair. A trembling again pierces his body. Julia rushes to him. He apologizes, calms down, and shares his concern with Julia, not understanding where he got such strength from. At some point, strange symptoms began to appear, and at first it was just a light trembling in the darkness. But gradually, this power of the spirit of darkness became greater and began to kill first small insects, and now a small bird. In the Fried family, which entered into a contract with the spirits of darkness, no one has received this power for almost 100 years, and now, feeling its awakening within himself, Theon is afraid of harming someone. Julia reassures him, because generations have passed, and the blood of the Freed family has become very diluted, so Theon will not become so strong as to harm a person. Julia advises him to also tell Ray about everything, because he can control the spirit of light and may be able to help Theon. But he had already asked Ray about power, and learned that the prince had been communicating with the spirit from the very beginning. But with Theon, everything is different. The spirit appears, does what it wants, and disappears. In addition, to control the spirit, you need a high degree of intimacy with it, and Theon does not have this. The boy remembers that the power came into him when he was about to write a letter to Dorothy. He hopes that he will learn to control the power before his next meeting with the princess. Clara informs Dorothea of a letter she has received inviting her to a meeting in the Countess Duncan's salon. The princess also learns that this time someone will be making their debut in high society. Over dinner, the Duke of Bronte began to think that Princess Dorothea was showing great interest in his illegitimate son. He knows that the princess refused visits to other noble children of her age, but she often spends time with Eden. The Duke considers it a good chance if a scandal occurs between his son with an unfortunate origin and the princess. He orders the maid to urgently call the Duchess to share his thoughts with her. After all, an illegitimate son and a princess unwanted by his father can become a wonderful couple. Without waiting for the Duchess to arrive, the angry Duke himself follows her into the room. Having learned that her husband is planning to bring Eden into high society, since Princess Dorothea is interested in him, the Duchess is beside herself with rage. She is ashamed that the Duke decided to trumpet to the whole world that he slept with a woman from a bar, fathered a child with her, and is now raising him. She assures that she has always treated the boy no worse than her son, and by allowing him to be taken away, she has already given him all her moral debt, and she does not agree to more. Bronte believes that Eden is old enough to face the world, and he suggests that the Duchess fears for Jonathan's place. The Duchess is sure that she will be ashamed to look people in the face if she brings out a child conceived by her husband with another woman. She tells her husband that she thinks Eden is very cute, but she will never be able to love this child. At this moment, the sound of a cup breaking on the floor is heard, which was dropped from the hands of Eden, who became an accidental witness to the scandal. The boy freezes for a moment, and then runs away from the room as fast as he can, not stopping to answer his father's call. Entering his son's room, the Duke finds him in tears. The boy is annoyed that his parents are embarrassed of him. Bronte tries to convince Eden, who does not understand why they are hiding him and fighting over him. He thinks that the reason for this is that he disappointed his parents and did not enter the epistemic school. He begged the Duchess to take him to the exam so much that she gave in, but there was an accident on the way, and they never got there. Eden believes that he is not to blame for his mother's low origins, so he does not understand why they fight because of him. The Duke assures the boy that he is innocent of anything and promises to formally introduce him as his son at a reception with Countess Duncan. The boy knows that his father and Duchess sincerely care about him, and the man realizes that he paid little attention to this precocious child. Princess Dorothea enters the Countess's estate, and everyone immediately showers her with so many compliments that she already regrets coming. She is distracted from the noisy ladies by the Duke of Bronte, who comes up to say hello and express his respect. Suddenly, Eden comes out from behind him. The princess is stunned by his appearance. She is surprised, because before her rebirth, Eden first appeared in high society only after Jonathan, who died during a hunt. Dorothea does not understand what mental changes have happened to the Duke of Bronte, because until then they constantly hid him. The princess is happy about Eden's debut and sincerely congratulates him on his first appearance. The boy was relieved to meet Dorothea here, because he was worried, not knowing how to behave among strangers. The princess is sure that Eden will quickly get used to it, but his father calls the boy to the beginning of the event. Eden kisses the princess's hand and asks her forgiveness for having to leave her. Standing among the crowd, Dorothea hears the ladies whispering, blaming the Duke and admiring the generosity of Madame Bronte. But Dorothy knows that soon everyone will go crazy with the desire to approach him, because in his past life, his influence in high society was enormous. So much so that depending on whether Eden came to the ball, the number of visitors changed significantly, and this became his power. Countess Duncan learns of a musician's injury, as a result of which he will not be able to perform, and is afraid that there is no one to replace him. Eden, who accidentally witnessed the conversation, offers the Countess his candidacy for the role of pianist. The boy apologizes for his tactlessness and introduces himself as the youngest son of the Bronte family. The Countess laughingly asks Eden if he can perform Beethoven, since it is difficult for an ordinary person to play this composition. Eden claims that he rehearsed this composition every day and asks Mrs. Duncan to give him a chance. Dorothea sips her juice in boredom and wonders where Eden has gone. Suddenly, the hubbub of the crowd subsides, and turning around, the princess sees Eden sitting at the piano. The song fascinates the girl. It seems to her that Eden plays it as if he wants her to hear it. Dorothea thinks that perhaps if Eden had become a musician rather than a minister, he would have been happier, but he was very ambitious. Those present applaud the young talent, and he, finding the princess in the crowd, enthusiastically waves to her. Dorothea goes out onto the balcony to be quiet, but hears the ladies gossiping about how Eden waved to the princess. She is outraged that people are minding their own business, discussing how she and he are the perfect couple, and at that moment, Eden approaches her. Dorothy is sure that there is nothing good in their words, because their couple is ideal in that the abandoned Melanio and the illegitimate Bronte are two natural geniuses who cannot sparkle brightly. Now the ladies are discussing in a whisper that the princess cannot summon the spirit, and they are prophesying the end of the imperial palace. Suddenly, from somewhere on the balcony, bright red juice, sticky with sweetness, pours onto one of the ladies. Looking up, they see Aiden Bronte apologizing for accidentally knocking over a glass while trying to put it on the railing. Eden states that the Frieds have not been able to summon the spirit of darkness for over 100 years, but they still hold the power, meaning that if someone from Milano cannot summon the spirits, it will not cause the empire to fall. Clenching her fists, Dorothea asks Eden to stop, because she believes that Milaneo, who does not see spirits, is not Milenio. Bowing, the ladies make excuses that they only feel sorry for the princess, because she was left in Sarishan and has not been called to the palace for several years. The princess leaves, assuring the ladies that there is no need to feel sorry for her, because she is so unhappy that someone's heart ache for her. Eden throws the glass on the ground, a few steps away from the high society gossips, and follows the princess. Dorothea wants to return to where there are people who care about her: Stefan, Clara, Joy, and Poe. However, her path is blocked by a knight who appears out of nowhere, announcing the arrival of the imperial carriage. He reads out Karnan's order, which states that the princess has already recovered her health and therefore must return. Dorothy realizes that if she refuses, she will again receive the yoke of a rebel, so she asks for at least time to prepare. The knight must carry out the order without delay, but Dorothy asks him to at least let her say goodbye. The princess realizes that everyone she cares about, except Clara, will remain in Cerithian, and she worries about Joy and Poe. Dorothea asks for a couple of minutes to write letters for Clara and the boys. Eden enters the room and invites the princess to personally deliver the letter to the castle. The boy asks Dorothy not to worry, because he will properly fulfill everything she instructs him to do. The princess thinks that this time Eden will not act badly again, and asks him to give the letter to Clara. Eden congratulates the princess on her return to Lampus, and asks not to say goodbye as if they were seeing each other for the last time. Coming closer and smiling, Dorothy promises that they will definitely meet again. Eden reminds her of the debutante ball, where he will be her partner, and until then he promises to wait only for this day. Before Dorothy leaves, Aiden pulls her in, hugs her tightly, and kisses her on the forehead goodbye. Raymond is worried that Theon is hiding something from him. He thinks that his friend fell in love with Julia and they left him alone. With these thoughts, he walks along the corridor, and suddenly through the open door, he hears the sound of breaking glass. Ray opens the door and sees Theon sitting on the floor. He is shaking all over and looks very exhausted. The prince rushes to his friend, and he asks the prince to help him learn to handle the spirit as he wants. Dorothea arrived at the castle for the first time in 3 years, but nothing had changed, neither the castle nor Karnan. The emperor believes that it is time for the girl to return to the castle, but Dorothea sees no reason to be there. Karnan promises to change his mind about his daughter if she passes the entrance exams to epistemia. Previously, Dorothy would have been delighted by these words and began to study hard, but now she does not see the point in this and refuses. The enraged emperor did not plan to give Dorothy a choice. He orders her to take the exams. The princess agrees to take the exam, but refuses the teacher offered by the emperor. Lying in her room, Dorothea thinks about how important it was for her to know all the exam topics by heart before, and how it doesn't matter now. A bored Raymond flies into the room and rushes to his sister, and she, as usual, pushes him away. The prince gives Dorothy a bouquet of flowers as a welcome gift. Ray is inspired by the fact that his sister will enter epistemia. He is looking forward to going there with her and introducing her to friends. Dorothy again reproaches her brother for coming, instead of studying to chat with her about all sorts of nonsense. Clara is horrified by how suddenly the princess was summoned to the capital. She, clutching her head, rushes around the house, collecting her things. Upon learning that Dorothy is leaving, Joy and Poe are upset, because now they will have to return home to their father. With his face buried in his older brother's chest, Poe cries because he doesn't want to go back. In this bustle, they are all caught by Eden, who has arrived to fulfill the princess's request. He gives the letter to Clara, who, after reading it, admires the resourcefulness and kindness of the princess. The boys learn that Dorothea ordered them to also go to Lampus with Clara. Clenching his hands in envy, Eden says goodbye, refusing Clara's offer to stay for sweets. The boy leaves, but Joy and Poe catch up with him in the hallway, thanking him for the letter and apologizing for being angry with him. Noting the boy's luck, Eden orders them to try not to disgrace the princess and leaves. A month later, Dorothea stands in Karnan's office among exam forms scattered all over the floor. The emperor is furious that the princess scored 0 points, a score that no one has ever had before in the entire history of episteme. Dorothea assures her father that she did everything possible because she set a record that has never been seen before. She reproaches the emperor for the fact that the death of his wife was more important to him than the birth of his daughter, and in her entire life, she did not receive a single gift from him. Unable to bear the princess's suggestion that he would rather his daughter die than his wife, Karnan shouts at her. Dorothea asks the emperor if he wanted her to die when she was kidnapped several years ago, and receives a resounding slap in the face for this question. The princess accuses him of never hugging her because he doesn't consider her his child. She asks not to call her Princess Milaneo in the future because this name does not give her a blessing. Before taking her leave, Dorothy also asks that she not be invited to events or ceremonies. The girl leaves the room, glad that this happened, because now even the small remaining affection of her father for her has disappeared. Stefan runs up to Dorothea and is horrified to notice the redness on her cheek, but she assures her that everything is fine. However, the next moment the girl bursts into bitter tears. She no longer wants to stay in the capital and wants to go back to the castle by the sea. Stefan hugs Dorothy tightly, who, bursting into tears, wants to disappear from this world. And now she is already crying bitterly on his shoulders, asking him to take her away from here. With eyes swollen from tears, with a mark from a slap, the princess, smiling, thanks Stefan for being there. The knight smiles and strokes the girl's head, and her soul is much calmer. On the way, they meet Theon, who calls out to the princess and starts a conversation with her. Dorothea feels awkward because once again she appears before Theon in a form in which she does not want to appear. After listening to Dorothy's assurances that she is fine, he takes a tube of medicine from his pocket and advises applying it to her cheek. The princess takes the medicine, thanks Theon for his help, and, saying goodbye, leaves. Looking after her, the boy thinks about who could have hit Dorothy, and, worried about her, decides to ask. However, the power of darkness reappears, and Theon's whole body trembles, and he decides to be careful when meeting people. Dorothy looks at the medicine that Theon gave, but for some reason she thinks about Eden. She thinks of writing him a letter and telling him about what happened, because Eden always listened carefully to her stories, like a very close friend. Dorothea picks up the mahogany box and admires the contents. She decides to include a bookmark in the letter, which she made from a flower given by Eden to make him happy. The princess is thinking about writing about her miserable, lonely existence in the palace, or about the fact that her only parent wants her dead. Thinking it was no use, she changes her mind and slams the box shut. Eden squats in the garden, saddened by the lack of news from the princess. He's jealous of the guys who went to see her in Lampus, because he already misses Dorothy so much. Remembering the words of the princess, Karnan thinks that he would never prefer her death, because what kind of father wants his daughter to die at the hands of kidnappers? However, in reality, if it was possible to save Alice on the day Dorothy was born, at the cost of the girl's life, he would agree. Every time Karnan looks at his daughter, he remembers how his wife died in his arms, and he cannot be affectionate. He thinks about how eerily similar Dorothy is to her mother, and how he might develop some feelings for her. However, the girl cannot summon spirits, and this puts the imperial family at risk. The emperor is upset that the child whom Alice gave birth to at the cost of her life is not able to summon a single spirit. Raymond is very upset by the news that Dorothea failed the exam for the academy. He tells Theon that she received the lowest grade, 0 points on the test. The boy is sure that the princess failed the exam not out of stupidity, but on the contrary, out of great intelligence, having done it on purpose. Theon shares the news with his friend that he has managed to suppress his power, and now he is less worried about harming someone. However, Raymond is concerned that if Theon continues to suppress the spirit of darkness, it could harm him. The spirit of darkness is associated with death, and the more Theon suppresses it, the less vitality it has. Raymond found old books in the Imperial Library and studied some facts. He shows Theon the story of how the first Milaneo and the first Freed made a bloody contract with the Spirit King. Milaneo created the sun by making a wish for the spirit of light, and Freed signed the spirit of darkness by throwing a curtain to escape the sun. Having learned that light and darkness were one, and families balanced each other, stabilizing the forces, Ray offers Theon help. The prince promises to find out how they can stabilize their powers so that the spirit of light will suppress the spirit of darkness. Loaded with boxes and things, Clara hurries to the princess, since the move took longer than she expected. Not noticing Stefan appearing on the way, the maid bumps into him, drops the boxes, and ends up in the arms of the knight. Dorothy comes out to meet them, upset that she did not have time to prepare for their arrival. Clara rushes to hug the princess, notices a mark on her cheek, and offers to quickly apply the medicine. Joy and Poe are also concerned about Dorothea's appearance. they vying with each other to ask what happened to her. And then the girl realizes that it was not about returning to Sarishan, but about the people who care about her. She joyfully welcomes them, because her home is now where these people are. All of them, along with Stefan, rush to hug the princess. She is happy because she is again surrounded by dear people. Sitting over a cup of tea, Dorothy reflects on how good it is that everyone came, because she feels uncomfortable being around Karnan. Joy and Poe approach her to see how they can help, and Dorothy orders them to live as before, just not to go to other palaces and practice more etiquette. Theon and Raymond enter the room, who came to support his sister because he is worried about her mood lately. Theon compliments Dorothy, and she finds herself seeing that, thanks to his friendliness, the memories of his death are gradually fading. Raymond notices the boys standing aside and asks his sister who they are. The boys are in awe of the fact that the crown prince is talking to them, but Ray treats them with a simplicity not typical of a prince. Dorothy realizes that maybe this isn't such a bad thing, since she's always been jealous of his brightness and how well loved he is. Dorothea is already 16 years old. She is walking through the garden and suddenly hears Clara calling her. Out of breath, the maid runs up to the princess to inform her, to ask her for a few days of leave. As it turned out, Clara's father, who had been ill in recent years, died this morning. Dorothy sympathizes with the maid and regrets that she did not know about this earlier, in order to give her more time to spend with her sick father. Clara is touched by her mistress's understanding and kindness, but Dorothy does not think so, because she knows nothing about the life of her maid. The princess orders someone to be sent to help Clara organize the funeral and a wreath on Dorothea's behalf. However, she learns that only ministers known to nobles are allowed to send a wreath from the imperial family. Dorothy orders the wreath to be sent anyway, and plans to appear in person at the funeral so that Clara, who has cared for her all these years, will be there. Dorothea is not afraid of the prospect of appearing on the street where commoners live, because she cannot leave a person important to her in a difficult moment. Clara thinks about how much she needs to prepare for tomorrow's funeral. She is distracted from her work by an unexpected knock on the door. She is surprised, because she is not expecting anyone. Clara opens the door and sees Stefan on the threshold, who has come to help her. Those gathered in the funeral hall are whispering about the wreath sent on behalf of the imperial family. Clara stands in the hall and thanks Stefan for his help, because thanks to the princess, organizing the funeral was easy. She learns from the knight that he himself volunteered to help her because he was worried about her after hearing her cry. The imperial carriage approaches the funeral hall, and the princess appears, dressed in a mourning dress. Dorothy apologizes for arriving late, but Clara is so moved that she does not know how to thank the princess. She hugs the girl tightly and promises that she will live with her for the rest of her life. After the funeral, the delegation went to Clara's home to drink tea. Dorothea learns that her maid has an older brother, but he is in no condition to receive guests. At this moment, the door to the next room opens, and Clara's brother, Anton, appears on the threshold in a wheelchair. He introduces himself and apologizes to the princess for the inconvenience. Anton thanks Dorothea for her condolences and for the way she takes care of his sister. The princess claims that she considers Clara her family, because family is not just people connected by blood, but someone more important. Embarrassed, Clara leaves the living room to prepare another batch of tea. Anton thanks the princess for loving his sister with all her heart and seeing her true character. He talks about his illness, due to which he cannot work, because he knows how to sew, but people do not buy things made by cripples. Having learned about Anton's sewing abilities, Dorothea is struck by the idea of how she can help him. Meanwhile, Clara sits sad and embarrassed in the yard, hugging her knees. Stefan comes out to her to check if everything is okay. As it turned out, Clara did not want to introduce her brother to Stefan and the princess, since until now everyone had neglected him. Clara is ashamed. She thinks that she deceived Dorothy, because she does not consider herself good. With tears in her eyes, she tells how she was tired of her sick father and brother, and did not want to return home from the castle. Stefan silently hugs Clara and holds her close to calm her down. He understands that it was hard for the girl to bear this burden alone, and there is nothing to blame her for. The knight speaks of Clara's kindness, which the princess saw, and the girl feels better in his arms. Saying goodbye to the maid, Dorothea asks to contact Stefan if help is needed. The princess reports that she will be busy for some time, as she has an important matter. Sitting in her office, Dorothea works hard on a plan to create a support center for the disabled. She dreams of creating a program to provide funds for treatment and regular medical care. Dorothy also wants to create a community where people with similar problems can communicate, but this requires permission from the emperor. The princess recalls how she planned to create such a center even before her rebirth, but the nobility perceived the idea negatively. People from the highest circles believed that they needed to invest in a business that could benefit the palace. Karnonu also called the idea of a princess a useless endeavor. He said that mediocre people are of no use. Dorothea did not understand how one could treat others poorly just because they were not beneficial. Then she thinks that if she had power, no one would dare to look down on her. These thoughts frightened Dorothea because she promised herself not to wish for much, but she continues to do so. Distressed that nothing has changed and feeling hopeless, the girl gets up from the table. Ray enters the room and, noticing Dorothy's papers, asks permission to look at her plan. After reading his sister's work, the prince is delighted. He wants to conduct an analysis and begin implementing the plan. Dorothea believes that most likely she will not succeed, because for this she needs the emperor's permission. Raymond offers his sister help. He promises to talk to his father because it is difficult for Dorothy to do this. The princess believes that the emperor can listen to Ray and wants to try for the sake of Clara and Anton. Raymond promises to talk to the emperor because he is ready to fulfill any request of his sister. However, in return, he has a condition. Dorothea must thank him and hug him. The princess refuses, but Ray doesn't back down. He doesn't understand why Dorothy can't hug him for once. Distressed, Raymond lies face down on the floor. It hurts him that his sister never did this and did not love him since he was 1 year old. Dorothy remembers being irritated after her rebirth when her brother picked her up. She doesn't understand why her hugs are so important to Ray and what they mean to him. He believes that this is an agreement to take another step towards a relationship in which they will understand each other a little more. When asked to fulfill some other request of her brother, Ray asks her to kiss her on the cheek. Dorothy agrees, but promises to fulfill the request only after the prince receives permission from the emperor. With the hope that the princess's heart has opened a little more for him, Ray heads to her father's office. On the way, he stops at a portrait of his mother, and the very first memory pops up in his head: his late mother in a coffin and his father looking at her. Instead of his mother, his younger sister came into this world, a special child, Dorothea Milaneo. Raymond hugged her, afraid of losing someone else close to her, and promised to always protect his little sister. Looking at the portrait of his mother, the prince promises that he will take care of Dorothy and will do everything possible for this. After reviewing the papers, the emperor is interested in why Raymond decided to spend the imperial budget on such an insignificant matter as helping the disabled. He considers such waste unnecessary, but Ray argues that it is very important. The emperor demands that the prince not give in to trifles and always think about profit, because the most important thing is the prosperity of the empire. Ray insists that the prosperity of the people is the prosperity of the empire. Without the people, there is no point in the existence of the emperor. Hearing the name of Dorothea, who is involved in this plan, Karnan becomes furious. He does not consider the girl part of the Milaneo family and thinks that she is opposed to them. Raymond does not agree with his father because she is not like that at all. He accuses the emperor of not being interested in his daughter at all. Karnan remains silent, but with all his appearance, he shows Ray that he will not rely on the girl's opinion when making a decision. The emperor claims that the name Milaneo is more significant than it seems, and that it is not worth appearing to people for a while and then disappearing, because it is impossible to shine for everyone all the time. Ray feels like the emperor doesn't understand that Dorothy is trying to create a world where everyone has equal rights and helps each other. The prince insists that he turn to the emperor precisely because the name Milaneo has power. He claims that Dorothea made this plan because she knows that the family has power, money, and strength that can help people. Raymond does not understand what is the point of the Milaneo family if they only seek power, but his father informs him of the critical situation in the family. The emperor is unhappy with Dorothea's inability to summon spirits because this could lead to the fall of Milaneo. Ray does not like that his father considers the princess mediocre and does not understand why he hates her so much. Karnan reminds his son of the Frid family, who have lost the ability to communicate with spirits, and therefore power is in the hands of Milaneo. However, due to Dorothy's lack of power, the imperial power is at risk, so the emperor advises Ray to take care of those who do not have flaws. The prince does not understand how human hearts can be weighed on scales, because they are all citizens of Ubera. Considering the conversation with his son completed, the emperor turns around and leaves the room. Raymond is saddened that he will not be able to help people because the emperor relies only on the power of the spirits. The prince went to Dorothea, not knowing how to tell her about the emperor's refusal. He tells her the bad news, but insists that the princess proceed with her plan anyway. He promises to take responsibility for this decision, but Dorothy considers this crazy. Ray proposes to pretend that he willfully conveyed a false permission from the emperor. He also offers his sister his money, knowing that she does not have enough funds to implement the plan. Joking that he won't be kicked out for this, since he is the only crown prince, Ray immediately regrets his words. Dorothy grabs him by the collar of his shirt and shakes him furiously, not understanding why her brother is so desperately trying to help her. Taking her hands in his, the prince claims that he simply likes to fulfill his sister's wishes. He wants her to reveal her talents and abilities, and therefore helps her. Dorothea can't wrap her head around why Raymond loves her so much, because he has every reason to hate his sister. She confesses her sin that she always hated him because she was jealous. Dorothy wants the prince to ignore her like Kernan and the other aristocrats. Ray apologizes to her sister with a smile on her face for not being able to hate her. He feels happy, because Dorothy considers herself bad only because she is jealous of what she says about her kindness. Ray believes that truly bad people do not feel guilty, no matter what happens, and never repent. He is sure that Dorothea is not like that, and tightly hugs his sister, who still has difficulty believing that she can be called kind. However, at some point, her heart melts, and she hugs her brother tightly, apologizing and pouring bitter tears into his shoulder. Raymond is in a good mood, and Theon and Julia, noticing this, ask what happened to the prince. He talks about his tender feelings for his sister and how they are working together to create a support center. Having witnessed a conversation between friends, Nereus Pons laughs at the idea of opening a center for the disabled. He calls the project crazy, but Raymond, as usual, does not take his words to heart. Nereus believes that money needs to be invested wisely and is sure that the emperor will never allow such stupidity. Pons believes that the prince should have been kicked out of the epistemic a long time ago because he is a poor student and wastes time on useless ideas. Without losing her dignity, Ray thanks Nereus for taking care of other people's problems and hints to him to mind his own business. Pawn reminds that the imperial family is declining, and Theon stands up for his friends. Nereus is reminded that he lost in battle to this same princess, who has no connection with the spirits. Raymond, still smiling, advises Pons to mind his own affairs and the affairs of the Kingdom of Hark. Leaving Nereus alone with his evil thoughts, Ray, Theon, and Julia leave the room. Dorothea discusses with Ray the need to change people's perceptions and stop discrimination against people with disabilities. While thinking about